Okay, call the select board meeting for Monday, November 21st, 2022 to order. First item on our agenda is agenda additions or changes. Any changes from staff?
Two potential changes from staff. Under business item 5A, Ken Signorello has withdrawn from consideration for moderator, so that can come off the agenda.
Okay.
And item 6A, the minutes of November 7th, we're missing a motion that was made after executive session. So if you move that under business, I can speak to that.
Okay.
There's also a memo at your seats, no impact on the agenda, but just some updates on the budget. Which would be item 5E, and I can speak to those when we get to that portion of the agenda.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Greg. Any other changes from board members?
Yes, I would like to thank, I assume it's Public Works and the Fire Department for painting some of those hydrants. They look fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, so I will make the motion that we strike Ken Signorillo from business item 5A, that we accept the modified memorandum for item 5E and move the minutes for November 7th to be business item 5H. Thank you, Tracy. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. We got an agenda. Next item on the agenda is public to be heard. This is a time for members of the public to speak to the board on topics that are not on the agenda. If you'd like to speak during public to be heard, either raise your hand in the room or use the raise your hand function in the Zoom meeting application. To do that, you can float your cursor over the reactions tab down at the bottom of your screen, and a raise hand button will appear. And is there anyone who would like to speak during public to be heard? See any hands in the room? And I'm not seeing any hands online. So we'll move on to the first item of business, interviews and possible appointment. A volunteer to serve as the town moderator. You, Catherine? Yes. Come on up. Introduce yourself. It's your opportunity to share any thoughts you have about why you'd like to do this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name's Catherine Knopper. I go by Kat sometimes. I work here in town, and I only moved here in July, but I've been living in Waterbury. My family's from Vermont. My stepfather has been town moderator in the town of Newfane for over 20 years. So there's definitely a certain pride that my family has in that role. I'm young. I'm obviously new to Essex as well, so there's certainly a certain amount of respect I would have for this process. And in getting to know how you all see the role and some of the challenges. I have been involved in unions in the past, so I'm familiar with Robert's rules. I would certainly need to do more training and spend more time with my stepfather. It's a lot to take on, I would think, for more than just one day. Also, January and the warning and the different steps that would go into making sure that our town voters are heard and that there's a organized process when it comes to town meeting. And I guess I am very curious to see what questions you have of me. And unfortunately, Ken is not here, so I also just very much welcome you to consider my candidacy regardless of whether or not there was somebody else to hear from today.
So to be clear, there was another candidate we interviewed at our last meeting.
Oh, great. Okay.
So you're
So I don't have to feel like a de facto
right.
option. That's wonderful. Yes, please assist me in letting you know about myself and my interest with any.
Okay, great. Any questions?
What experience do you have addressing large groups of people that tend to get overexcited about items?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I don't know how to put it.
I think this would probably be the larger group, but I have been to a couple conventions in different parts of the country with my union when I was in a union. And being able to hold the floor was certainly something that I actually enjoyed. But one advantage I would think that I have is also not being as familiar with all of the people in the town yet, and able to serve that kind of unbiased role. I think I would lean heavily on being transparent about when I might need to go to the rule book and say I'm going to the rule book. I would also very much embrace that opportunity to understand the rules as a means of making sure that voices are heard. And again, having some of the stories growing up of some of those challenges, whether it's being kind of taken aside or having different influences, and just remembering to refer back to those rules, and also know where I can lean on. It's a legal question, or we're here to go through the process and stick to kind of what that looks like, as opposed to trying to settle a dispute, leaning heavily on the rules.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the town manager. Is there a residency requirement for moderator position?
I believe you're supposed to be a resident of the town of Essex.
There's no, you don't have to be here a year before you run for an office or anything. I don't know.
I don't believe so. I think as long as your moderator is elected from the qualified voters of Essex, by the voters of Essex.
Just wanted to check. Thanks.
Anybody else? Kendall, you.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the way town meetings work? Have you been to a lot of town meetings? And if you were selected, would you run for the position in the future?
Yes, so it really hasn't been since I was younger that I was attending town meetings with my family. So it has been about 10 years in a town meeting setting, very honest with you. But I see these roles as like something that you don't jump into thinking that you're not going to be committed to it and learning it and remaining in the town. My goal is to be able to be a property owner in the town of Essex. I'm renting. My work is here. My career is really dependent on being here for my job. And so making a home in this town, as well as really getting to know its political life and the institutions here, is really important to me. I am currently a member of the Community Justice Center on a volunteer panel. And that's just one avenue with which I decided to kind of be a member of this community. I see this as a very valuable role, obviously, but one also that would allow me to contribute in a way that wouldn't be necessarily political or subject focused, but rather process and community institution building, which I think is absolutely critical to having a happy community and a functioning political space as well.
Thank
For
you.
your question.
Thank you.
We're going around
What's
the room.
left? I have a question that's kind of leads into what they both said, but I thought of it at the beginning and I want to stick with it. But beside what you've told us in your introduction, is there certain things beside the connection that really interest you in the position? And also, could there be a couple of skills or assets that you have that you think are special that you could bring to the moderator position?
I really appreciate that question. Organization. I have always leapt at the chance to help run meetings, whether it's at work or in my volunteer experiences, and making sure that those spaces were uplifting voices that might not be heard, or at least making sure that there is space for everyone to participate. I won't lie, there's very much an attraction to having some of that power, which is really the town moderator has an immense responsibility to be maintaining that process. And I actually thrive off of kind of that that responsibility, essentially. I have in the past been more of a public speaker in terms of put together press releases, speaking before groups on advocacy issues. I see myself able to put on that hat and step aside from my personal life, which I think is definitely an advantage here. What does this space call for? That's what motivates me. It's bigger than me. It's not about me. And I feel that I am very well equipped to be able to put on a hat that really serves that purpose.
Well, you just answered the question I was going to ask. So I'll go with my usual. Tell us about a time you changed your mind on an issue. What was the issue and what brought about the change?
Oh, that's a great question. I think recently more of what I have changed my mind on has been about finding practical solutions to problems that are often posed very ideologically. Not that I would want to jump into saying, for instance, police brutality or a subject like that, but more along the lines of people running for office that may be judged for one sentence they say that is not what they meant. And kind of seeing my community fray because of lack of space to be able to hear people. I think it moves me past what in my youth was more political, where does somebody stand on the matter versus how can someone engage on this topic? So I think I'm being fairly vague because I'm unable to give you one instance, but I've seen how people aren't given a chance to be heard and are only heard in terms of perhaps one stance that they have. And I felt really strongly that our community in Vermont is bigger. Communities are bigger and better than that, and that we can continue to do a better job at hearing one another, even if we have very different views, especially because Vermont is full of many different interests and people. I love that we have a tradition of being able to move past that and hear each other. So that's my shift from politics to process, actually, which I guess kind of means that I'm here in this room.
Thank you.
So do you have any questions for us?
Ideally, this sort of position would be something that I would have been here to be in town meetings and see in action. Would you have any advice on resources and people locally, or potentially other opportunities in the near future to observe? I mean, even just this already observing how this meeting proceeds would be a very easy step for me to take.
To answer the question, at least from what I'm aware of, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns is likely going to offer shortly I think they do it annually, a training for moderators.
Oh, do they?
Yep. And also Steve Eustace, who would, I'm certain, be willing to sit down with you or have a discussion with you or however.
Wonderful.
I guess I shouldn't speak for him.
Right.
I would suggest and I've known Steve for a very long time, and I think he would be very amenable to that. One thing I did want to comment on is I don't know we haven't had an in-person town meeting in a couple of years.
Oh,
And we have not yet had an in-person meeting that had a ballot, or did we? We have one that had a ballot vote. Our budget is now on the ballot. So town meeting used to be the big show was
right.
getting the ballot approved.
I
And
see.
people would, suggest moving it up. People would suggest moving it down, and there would be, all the parliamentary rigmarole to go through all of those steps, which we don't have anymore. And so it may be a little bit of new territory for us as well, because again, or remembering how to do it, because we haven't had an in-person. And I think it can't be a hybrid meeting because you can't vote.
Right.
There's no way to vote.
Right.
And so it's going to be a different situation than people are accustomed to. I think they've gotten used to in the last couple of years.
Right. You're saying that people might be used to not being in person, and there would be. Would we, or do we know for certain whether we would be?
They're not going to be used to not having input on the budget by the time town meeting rolls around, because it'll be a done deal. There'll be the presentation the night before and the balloting the next day, and
Right.
that's will only be the second time we've done this. So
I see.
Right. But there could be other questions
Right.
that,
Yeah.
we're also talking about increasing the capital tax,
Right.
which I think we haven't confirmed it needs to be a floor vote.
Right.
So that would be,
right.
that would probably be one of the bigger questions that comes up. I don't know. We haven't.
Right.
There's some discussions about some charter changes. There's other things that.
Okay.
Again, I don't know if we do those from the floor or that has to be about.
I was thinking, I can't remember. I want to say those are probably a ballot vote, but we'll have to confirm that.
Right.
And so you mentioned being involved in the warning also.
I've been reading the moderator guide rather than necessarily looking at Town of Essex or what Essex Junction.
they approve the warning before it goes out.
Right. Exactly. That part of.
Okay.
So,
Right.
in speaking on that, I was thinking about what are the obligations outside of town meeting for participation.
The only other thing I know is I think you need to look at the Australian ballot before it goes to print. It's the only other thing I could think
Oh,
of.
right. Right. So yeah, I guess there's a couple of the warning and the ballot. I think
Yeah.
you may
And
need
then
to,
running the meeting.
to sign off on. And then I guess once you know what's on the warning, you know what questions are going to need to be asked.
Right.
How you can prepare
Right.
for that.
Right.
Right. So we have two candidates. We generally don't talk about candidates in public session, so we'll have an executive session later. And if we come to a decision, somebody from the manager's office will contact you tomorrow.
Great.
And let you know.
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate the time.
Yep,
Take care. And welcome to Essex.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to business item 5B, interview and possible appointment of volunteer to serve on the Essex Housing Commission, Deborah Flannery. Deborah, are you online?
I am. Hello. Good evening.
Okay, so this is your opportunity to introduce yourself to the select board. Share any information you'd like to about why you're stepping forward for this position, and
Sounds good. Well, I'm Deb Flannery. My husband and I moved to Essex in February, just earlier this year. We relocated from Vermont to Vermont from the Midwest after my husband had taken a job in Burlington in 2019. So it's been a bit of a transition period, and we finally have settled here in Essex. I learned about this opportunity through some professional associates that have served on the Housing Commission, and they encouraged me to consider it. And so my background is very well suited to the issues I would think that they would be considering. I have a master's degree in urban and regional planning with an emphasis on housing and community development. And I've worked in affordable housing across an entire spectrum of housing finance and development topics for 30 years. So I have a long career. And after moving to Vermont, I eventually took a position with Evernorth, which is formerly known as Housing Vermont. We are a parent organization that was formed after the merger of Housing Vermont with its sister organization that serves Maine and New Hampshire in the same capacity. And it's a Northern New England Housing Investment Fund. So Evernorth is the merger of Housing Vermont and the Northern New England Fund. And we develop and finance affordable housing throughout a 3-state area. So I work there now. And so I have those connections and thought that this would be a great way to meet people in the community and learn a lot about what's going on and just be of service. I've been on a couple of boards as I left my last professional role, and I have sort of gradually been stepping those duties down. And I have my last commitment, which is to the Habitat for Humanity board in Minnesota, where I was working previously. And that's ending here in March. So my schedule is freeing up in order to take on some new commitments. And this looked like an interesting one where I could be maybe useful. So happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
When it comes time to make a decision and you find yourself in your position in a minority, how would you handle that situation?
I'm sorry, what was the question? What didn't quite follow that?
When the group needs to make a decision and your opinion is in the minority, how would you handle that situation?
I guess I would state my the reasons for my position, and just hope that we have a mutual understanding of the different perspectives. And I guess whatever process is in place for making the decision I would respect and move forward.
Thank you.
Kendall.
Do you feel there might be any conflicts of interest with your day job? And do you have any ideas of where there might be opportunities where you could use the skills from your day job in this appointed position?
Well, I'll have to be honest. I don't know a lot of the details of what comes before this commission in terms of decision making. I would think that we at Evernorth, there could be the occasion of conflict, and I would certainly abstain from anything that would approach that in a decision making capacity. I think it would be fairly intermittent if so. And certainly I don't have a personal stake. It's a nonprofit organization. I don't have the personal stake in any of their activities, business activities. But I do think that my knowledge and experience does give me an opportunity to understand a lot of the different types of resources that are out there. I have a deep breadth of knowledge in housing finance programs and resources and ways of structuring resources to promote housing of all sorts, from everything from homelessness to workforce housing and affordable homeownership. So I think it just gives me a breadth of knowledge that I could bring to bear and assist.
Thank you.
Hey there. What are some of the needs that you see in Chittenden County, specifically in our town, and what skills or assets do you think you could bring to the commission?
Well, I think the needs of Chittenden County and this community are much like, the rest of the state, where the cost of building housing is, to make it affordable, it's just out of reach for everyday people. So I think we are really seeing, a lack of supply of, affordable units and a range of options. So people are having a harder time affording to live in the communities where they work. I have recently, I don't know exactly how this could work here, but I've been asked a lot about it in my current role. One of the things I've just recently done is I've launched a new fund, and it's been in the newspapers, so you may have read about it, but it's called the Upper Valley Loan Fund. And I worked with a group of anchor institutions, the Dartmouth College, Dartmouth Medical Center, and a bunch of employers in the region to form a $9 million housing fund to create a little bit of extra subsidy to promote workforce housing, because they were seeing a dire shortage of housing opportunities for their workforce. And so I just closed on the fund with the investors, and we're now beginning to deploy them. And these are targeted to the region where these employers are. So that's a kind of thing I have the ability to do, to know how to bring people together and solve for these kinds of problems around resources and engagement. It was a very deep engagement of understanding what the problem was and how people could participate in solving it. So I just throw that out there as an example, but I think that's just one of many ways that my knowledge could be useful.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can I just want to, in regards to what you just said, I read about that project and it was very awesome. So thank you for doing that. It was very exciting to read about it. So
Yeah, thank you.
sorry.
What do you see as the biggest driver as it relates to the affordability of housing in our region?
Well, I think the biggest driver is that we have costs that keep going up, and I don't know if it's just it's not just in Vermont, it's nationally. But the pandemic really, caused a dramatic increase over time, and so the resources that we have are, have to stretch a lot, have to cover a lot bigger gaps. So the cost to build the housing to make it affordable for folks that have more moderate incomes is significantly higher than what you can rent it at if you're going to keep it affordable. So that gap requires public subsidies, and those subsidies have not been keeping pace with the increasing costs. So we just keep falling further behind. And Vermont does a very good job, the state legislature, of prioritizing housing, but even in that context, we still are falling behind. So I really think we need to figure out, one, take a look at how our cost structures are, what our own local policies are, and how we can promote more access to housing, how we can create opportunities for the people to live in our communities, but also just look at, in general, at the entire whole process of building housing to understand what we can do to stop seeing such increases. It's it's going to be impossible to do that, to keep up if we don't address the cost.
Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions for us?
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay, so we have 2 vacancies.
I believe so.
And this position's been posted for a couple of months now. We get 2 options. We can either go into executive session and have a discussion, or we could,
I'd like to make a motion at this time. We appoint Deborah Flannery to the Housing Committee.
Second. All right.
okay, thank you, Don. Thank you, Tracy. Do we need to specify a term length?
I'm trying to remember if it was in the packet, but
I feel like it was
we can fill it with the longest term available.
Mhm.
All right. Any further discussion?
2025.
2025? Thank you. So ending in June 2025. Okay with that? Adding that to
I am
the
okay
motion?
with that amendment. Yep.
You? Yep. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, congratulations, Deb, you're it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for stepping
Thank
forward.
you.
Thank you. I'll drop off now.
Okay, moving on to our next business item, interview and possible appointment of a volunteer to serve on the Energy Committee. Daniel Parkins, are you Daniel?
Yes.
Let's come on up, introduce yourself. Let us know anything you think we need to know about you, and if you want to be on the energy.
Yeah,
Don't
hi.
touch the microphone.
Can you hear okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yes, so my name is Daniel Parkins. I am a new resident and homeowner here in this town of Essex. I've been here for about 9 months, got married a few months ago. I originally am from Utah, but Vermont called my name when I came here for graduate school. I went to the School of International Training, the SIT Graduate Institute down in Brattleboro. I got my master's degree in peace building and conflict transformation with an emphasis in sustainable development. Before going to grad school, I actually served as a AmeriCorps Vista in the state of Massachusetts, working with Habitat for Humanity. And ever since, I've been committed to public service and supporting community development in any way I can. After graduate school, I had the pleasure and honor of working at the Carter Center, analyzing peace and justice programs in Liberia, and then moved back to Utah to deal with some turbulence on the home front for a while. COVID caused a bit of shakiness, if you will, on career trajectories. But while in Utah, I had the wonderful opportunity to jump into rural economic development work, providing access to opportunity through digital inclusion efforts and broadband development, and working in access to justice, as well as continuing to support on a grassroots level the procurement and development of renewable energy resources throughout the United States. Now that I'm here in Vermont, I have started my business, Community Wealth Development. It is primarily focused on facilitating the development of many forms of wealth. A vibrant arts culture can be a form of wealth. A vibrant business culture is generally considered a form of wealth. But where that really lands for me is on the sustainability side of things. If we are to develop long-term wealth within our communities, then we need to plan long-term and create sustainable solutions that benefit future generations. So I'm here today in order to volunteer to serve on the Energy Board because I care about transitioning away from resources that are damaging our community and that are impacting our globe as a whole. And I am excited and very interested in jumping in and starting to participate in the activities here in the town of Essex. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? John, you usually kick.
I'm going. Okay, I have a couple of them. The company that you've started, this wealth development, is that an Essex company or is that a?
Yeah, the company Community Wealth Development was organized here in the town of Essex. That is true. I understand there may be a conflict of interest there in terms of work. I am happy and willing to abstain from any business opportunities within the town of Essex regarding energy moving forward.
Okay. And my usual question is, when you're in a minority and making a decision, how do you handle that?
Yes, I rely heavily on my training in peace building by practicing dialogue. Dialogue is not a debate, it's not a conversation, it's not a discussion. It is a process to seek understanding and to find ways to build common ground. And so when I'm in the minority, or in the majority for that matter, my effort is to seek understanding from everyone that's a part of the community, or on a board or a chair, and provide space for all of us to reach that place where we can find mutual benefit in moving forward.
Thank you.
Do you see any particular opportunities in Essex right now for building renewable distributed energy type things?
Yes, absolutely. So I was doing a little bit of homework. I haven't done a lot. I have many things on my plate, but I was watching the the Renewable Energy Conference 2022 with Jennifer Green and Alicia Barton. I believe that was on Town Meeting TV just a little while ago, and that provided a lot of insight into the regional efforts in renewable energy development throughout New England. I also was looking at the Community Revitalization Program and seeing your efforts, or at least the committee's efforts on winterizing and providing more energy efficient subsidies for low-income homes in the area. Now, beyond that, there are also a variety of national funding streams that I've had the opportunity to develop proposals for regarding renewable energy, and I believe that those types of funding opportunities would be worthy to look at and consider here in Vermont as well. One in particular that I recently applied for was the National Science Foundation's Rural Economic Engines program, where I helped my business associates in Utah develop a economic engine model around distributed energy resource systems using a variety of renewable energy resources to develop microgrids throughout eastern Utah. That funding stream provided $1 million for the first 2 years of operation and $160 million for the next 10 years of operation if the engine gets off the ground. So that is a skill and an asset that I'm happy to bring to this committee.
Yeah, and there's no conflict between your business and that on this commission?
No, I would make sure that I do not benefit monetarily from anything engaged in with the committee.
Thank you.
Ethan, you got a question?
You didn't leave me much, but I have two things that I've been thinking about. The first one is I just want to ask you a little bit more specific of what your business does.
Yeah, I'm still very much in the process of figuring that out. I'm about 4 months into the venture, so I'm in the ideation stage, doing a lot of market research at the time, interviewing a lot of people and trying to build a network in Vermont. I'm very much of the school of thought that when entering a new community, it is best to listen and observe first. But if I could speak a little bit towards what I am hoping to begin to develop here is one, providing types of grant writing, proposal writing services and technical support to regional efforts to develop a variety of different economic development initiatives, primarily in tech. That being said, I'm also very connected to the arts community. I'm a poet and a writer, and so I have a lot of aspirations in developing a lot of community initiatives to rebuild the arts community in Burlington. Like I said, community wealth can be created in many forms, and so I am very much hoping to, in many ways, facilitate the strengthening and development of ecosystems on a state level here in Vermont.
Awesome, thank you. And then my second question, since you're from Utah and I have a connection to it myself, what solutions have you seen, if any, that tie in with agriculture in rural parts, whether it's biodegradables or
No, that's a fantastic question. I actually have spent a considerable amount of time working on farms when I was growing up. As I worked on an apple orchard, my father was a farmer. He wasn't very good, but we had a go at it for a few years there. I grew up in rural Utah, and I actually, when I was traveling abroad, I worked on farms for housing and food through a program called World Online Organic Farming. So this is all to say that I very much understand the need for innovation to take place in agricultural spaces. And I think that through developing new renewable energies and investing in new technologies that can support farmers, there's a great deal that can be done in that space, particularly in rebuilding the soil base through practices like mob grazing rather than the traditional or conventional method of working with cattle or livestock in general, as well as introducing more robotics and technology into the farming space directly to reduce the cost of labor involved with organic grown goods, if that makes sense.
All right, thank you.
Gracie, you got anything?
Tell us about a time you changed your mind on an issue. What was the issue and what brought about the change?
Okay, so a time that I changed my mind. I think that a good example of where I changed my mind on an issue was while working with an organization in Utah called Building Beginnings. They support the re-entry efforts of individuals that are exiting the prison system. They provide intensive inpatient care with a variety of programs. And this was shortly after I had just analyzed access to justice programs in Liberia on a larger scale, and I had a lot of ideas about what could be done. In this particular case, while working with this nonprofit to first evaluate their programming and then move on to seek funding for them, I had to acknowledge the differences in local activities. So, for example, there was a lot of civic engagement and volunteer mentorship opportunities in the programs that I had analyzed and evaluated abroad. While suggesting these same types of approaches here or in the state of Utah, I had to come to the realization that utilizing the same types of civic engagement activities would not be a good fit for the area they were in because of their personal standing in the community. The Carter Center has a very strong reputation and is able to use that reputation to leverage diplomacy. Whereas with this organization, the owners were ex-convicts themselves. They had turned their lives around and they had really spent a lot of time rebuilding their own personal wealth and their own space, and then moved forward to try and support others to do the same thing. Their strategy was to focus on micro businesses, and this is, I think, probably where my personal values varied a lot more. I more tend to fall on the political economy side of things, if you will. And so I had to learn and understand that by supporting and developing these micro businesses, they were actually creating a lot more peace and safety in their communities for these individuals by giving them access to new opportunities. It was a humbling moment, and it gave me a lot of insight in how I can do things better in the future.
All right. Do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, one question. I am just curious, what are the current pressing needs on the Energy Committee? Are there any particular issues that are kind of hot right now or challenging to overcome?
Any idea on that, Greg?
I actually I see Tom Yando online, and if he's able to pop in, I'd love to put him on the spot. I know he's been attending Energy Committee meetings. Are you there, Tom?
Yes, I am.
Thanks for saving me.
Some of the hot pressing items is looking to how can we get some more solar installed around the town? How do we jump on the bandwagon that the infrastructure bill has from the federal side has created to get more of that money into Vermont and particularly into Essex to help weatherize more of the homes here within Essex?
No, that it's always adoption is always a really big challenge, no matter what technology you're looking at. No, thank you. That helps provide insight and gives me direction on where I can start doing more research moving forward. I appreciate that, Tom.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Any other questions?
I would just suggest that maybe another area to look at is the program that Green Mountain Power has with the microgrids, setting up the houses. That right now that even with their help, it's cost prohibitive to most residents. If there was any way to make it much more economically viable, I think that's a great way to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? We again a situation where we could.
Mr. Chairman, given that there's this one candidate, I would like to recommend that we appoint Daniel Parkins to the Energy Committee.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kendall.
Term also would expire June 2025.
Perfect.
June 2025. Okay. Right. Any further discussion? Those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Congratulations.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And thank
I'm
you for
honored to be
stepping
on the committee. I appreciate it.
Right, great.
Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
Yep, take care. All right, so let's see. Now we are moving on to item 5D, presentation from and discussion with Greater Burlington Industrial, the council or corporation?
Corporation.
Corporation, that's what I thought. It looks like Sam Anderson.
Yes, thank you, and good evening. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Just a quick refresher, GBIC, the Greater Burlington Industrial Corp, is one of 12 RDCs, Regional Development Corporations, that exist throughout Vermont. We each have a region. Ours is Chittenden County. We were formed in 1954, and one of the first, actually the first building we ever built and leased was to IBM in Essex Junction. So Essex Junction and the town of Essex, we're particularly fond of throughout our history. We do partner with the state of Vermont to provide services to the dollar importing and value added businesses in our region. That is both within the town of Essex, as well as I am certain you have residents who work at other businesses throughout Chittenden County, as do we. We help those businesses with a variety of programs and services. And annually, we request contributions from the municipalities within Chittenden County. I've been in contact with your town manager, Greg, who presented 3 questions to me as you consider a possible contribution to GBIC. And Greg asked 3 very succinct questions. The first was, is GBIC looking for $7,500 from each Essex Town and Essex Junction? And my answer is, historically, the 2 municipalities have given us a joint contribution of $7,500. We're not privy to any conversations you've had in the past or the present with the city of Essex Junction. But I am aware that in prior years, $500 came from Essex Junction and $7,000 from the town of Essex. We are hopeful that we will see that amount again, but we're grateful for whatever you, the select board, decides to contribute. The second question Greg asked was, how are dues calculated? And unfortunately, we don't have a formula as the RPC, Regional Planning Commission, does based on number of residents. I will tell you, I attend the monthly meeting of your Economic Development Commission, and I would encourage you to ask Gino Sullivan if she feels we contribute constructively to those meetings. Greg will also verify that we attend the monthly municipal managers meetings that are hosted by the Regional Planning Commission. And we try and bring information that is valuable to you all as a municipality. We we develop the regional priority list. This is a list required by the state for the Northern Borders NBRC Regional Commission grants. If you're in the top 10 on the list, and our list happens to be greater than 10, you can receive extra points. GBIC also is enthusiastic to write recommendations for any other grants a municipality will apply for. And this list is reviewed twice a year, twice in a 12-month period, in the fall of a year and in the spring of a year. More and more, the legislature, the state legislature, has asked for this list beyond the 10 to see if the region has decided if it's a priority project. There is a committee made up of members of GBIC and the Regional Planning Commission that review all the projects every year. This leads to another big project we're doing right now, the SEDS. And that is the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. This is a document that after a year and a half, almost 2 years, we will submit to the EDA in conjunction with the Regional Planning Commission for approval by the federal EDA. That approval will permit us to apply to become an EDD. As you can see, we love acronyms. And that's an economic development district that puts us higher up in the chain to qualify for federal grants. Currently, the SEDS we're working on, which I believe Gino Sullivan may have told you about, is with 4 regions: Chittenden, Washington, Rutland, Addison, and 2 towns in Orange. And we are applying to be a district. In addition, we provide services. And when COVID hit, the state government asked us to help in areas we had heretofore not been as involved with, which were small, micro, commercial, and retail entities applying for federal COVID relief grants. We've done that, and it's been wonderful to work also with BIPOC businesses, and we continue to be involved. Right now, we're still involved with our Community Navigator program, which links small business, startups, and under 10 employees with vendors from Vermont. And we supply a grant so that business A, for example, needs technical assistance in financing or marketing or web design. We couple them with a vendor, a Vermont business, and pay that vendor to do that project for the business. We've had over 150 of those in our region that we've done in the last year and a half. The final question, and then I'll be quiet, is what Greg asked was, what would happen if Essex is only able to pay $4,000 this year, given that the town is looking at approximately a 21% tax increase? I'll give you the answer to that by saying we appreciate whatever annual contribution you can give us. And we understand that this year in particular, you're anticipating this significant tax increase due to the separation from Essex Junction and Essex Junction becoming a city, which has separated joint functions with you, the town. We're grateful for whatever contribution you give us that demonstrates your support for the work that we do. We're an organization of 3, and we like to think we work very hard to touch as many businesses with services as possible. In the letter of request, I also included our dashboard, which gives you a snapshot of what we've been doing this past year in 22. I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Sam. Any questions?
Yep.
In viewing this dashboard, how much of it had a direct impact on the town of Essex?
We've never divided it by municipality. That would take data work that our staff is not capable of doing. We report to the state of Vermont on a county-wide basis. So I wish we had the staff to be able to give that to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yep.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very good to know because I didn't know a lot of the things that you guys do. So thank you for that. And
You're welcome.
my question is, if the town can't fully fund the request of 7,500,
Right.
do you guys plan on asking the city for more than 500 to make up for it, or would you be at a loss?
I did.
You did.
I did mention to them that I'd be talking to you, and I mentioned that the 2 communities have given us the 7,500. I said that close to the same thing to them I've said to you. We will appreciate whatever you can give us, and we're very mindful of this year, particularly for the town and the tax implications from the separation with the city of Essex Junction.
Okay. The reason I asked wasn't to see if they were funding more or less. I was just curious as to if they had committed any funds or an idea of funds, because I wanted to know how much you guys were losing as a total number.
They did not discuss an amount at all. And I don't know if they've made final decisions such that Regina could share that with Greg.
Yeah.
But we were not told, as I don't expect you to tell me this evening. I am mindful that you'll need to consider our request along with all the others that you receive.
You have something to add, Greg? Go ahead.
Yeah, just Regina and I have talked a bit about this. I don't know what she's going to propose. I don't know what the city council will end up proposing for GBIC. I will say that the $4,000 that's proposed in the town's budget is based on a per capita split of that 7,500. So we felt proportionally it was, at least on a per capita basis, that the proportional contribution from the town going forward. That's how we came up with that.
The 4,000.
Any other questions?
Let me just ask, do you feel that there are more opportunities for grants and things that you could do for the town than there are for the city currently? In terms of our growth area and businesses that need help, things like that?
To be candid, it always depends on the projects that we are made aware of. We go on a very robust business visitation schedule. And when we talk with businesses, we discuss possible expansions, workforce training, grant opportunities with the Vermont Training Program, workforce partnerships. And we also ask business what issues they have that they want us to testify about, not only to our state legislature, but to discuss with our US congressional delegation. So I need to respond by saying it's very specific to what's happening. You've got a lot of activity going on right now, especially in the area of the Essex experience and what's going on there. And you, I don't know if you're aware, but Jean and town staff put forward a project proposal for that area for enhanced infrastructure to continue to attract business to that area. And it was placed on our regional priority list just 2 weeks ago, and it will be submitted to the state. So it depends on talking with the municipality and the businesses in your municipality, what they're looking for, what you're looking for, and how we can be value added to that, bringing possible grant opportunities before the parties that they may want to apply for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, so there's no action required. This is for information. So thank you, Sam, for your presentation.
Thank you.
As we go through our budget discussions, you'll find out what we decide, I guess.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next business item, which is continue fiscal year 2024 general fund budget work session. Dan, you come on.
So yeah, continuing with the fiscal 24 budget proposal, there's a memo in the packet that tried to provide some updates since we last met. I'll run through those in a moment, and also tried to as best we could provide answers to the questions and the issues and topics that you'd identified in the first two workshop sessions. Just hitting on the changes first of all. Big one, unfortunately, is in the wrong direction. When we were doing the police budget, we had put in the 3.5% of the administrative cost, which was part of the shared police agreement with Essex Junction. Unfortunately, we had not broken that out on a per capita basis. We missed that clause. We have to do it. There's no way around it. It's unfortunately about $120,000 swing of revenue that we're not going to be getting. That's the big change. There's some other smaller changes. VLCT dues went down about $1,000. Landfill monitoring, we're able to reduce that by about $2,000. Winooski Valley Park District dues went down about $2,000 from what we had expected. Also, this is in the memo that's in front of you today. It's not in the packet yet, but some changes that came in over the weekend. Green Mountain Transit dues also down a few $1,000s. They are projecting them at 71,000 as opposed to 77,000. Very small change in the health officer budget of about $200. All told, I don't have the exact number, which is why I don't want to put it in writing, but approximately we're now looking at about a 22.5% property tax increase. That's up from about the 21.5%. That translates to about $350 on the average home. So that's largely due to the police change that's being made here. Beyond that, I don't know. We're going to run through all 21 questions in here, but certainly, hopefully, you've had a chance to digest it. Dan and I can speak to anything that's in there if you have more questions, but just try to provide more information based on some of the conversations you've had and get you the information you need to keep working on the budget.
Do you have any specific questions that I can
I
ask?
have one under 12.
Mhm.
Under the health officer update. Yep. So you're going to promote one person to be a full-time health officer.
Correct.
Why are we sharing with the city when that was not something they wanted to do? We had discussed it with them, and they said no, they'd have their own health officer and not be connected to us anymore. And two, I'm just concerned that by appointing full-time, is this employee's other position full-time also?
Yes. Well,
I'm just
yes and
concerned
no.
about that.
The zoning administrator role is full-time. The health officer is not. It's a kind of as needed on-call position.
So instead of having a town health officer and a deputy health officer, we will only have a town health officer, but the city's town health officer will act as our deputy in cases where coverage is needed.
Correct. So
And vice versa. It's just a quid pro quo.
So each municipality would
agreement.
only pay for its own health officer. But then they would each back each other up, whether if somebody's on vacation, if
And no cost to either, right?
Correct.
We're not going to nickel and dime hours that the deputy spends.
we do recommend having a deputy health officer. It is a position that can be called on at any day, any hour, to allow people to, whether they're out sick on their own or on vacation, they're just not available. It does help to have a backup. It's a tough position that requires some knowledge and going into some pretty nasty situations in some cases. So do think it's worth having the backup. By sharing with the city and backing each other up in this case, it theoretically should save both municipalities money, so you're not paying for a health officer and a deputy health officer.
I guess my concern is that it says the change in the health officer results in a budget change of $200, but we had two before, and we gave up one that was a lot more than the assistant was a lot more than the
Yeah, I
$200.
have to double check on that. I think that when we were projecting for fiscal 24, because fiscal 23 kind of had a break point, it was budgeted with a certain rate for the first half of the year and a certain rate for the second half of the year. I think what happened is that we budgeted for fiscal 24 based on that entire amount versus the rates for the second half of the year. So it probably should have been a higher projection up front before we got the updates to the health officer. I think that's what's going on there. Because, I thought it would have been a little bit more. Not
Yeah,
more,
that's
but a little
given what. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I'll wait. I have a couple more, but go ahead.
Well, I was just going to follow up on that. Is there any need for a formal agreement or contract with that? As far as if we ran into a large issue that needed a lot more potentially than the city or anything, is there any need to have some kind of formal agreement versus I like the handshakes, but
It's not a bad idea to just get an MOU in writing. Regina and I have talked about it. We're both on board. Sharon Kelly is on board with that. It wouldn't hurt. I think part of it is going to come down to each municipality appoints its own health officers. But to formalize that probably wouldn't hurt.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, which one do you want me to start with? I'm trying to find it because it's different than what I'm reading in front of me. But I would like to talk about Essex experience first, if I can find it in the packet that was.
The Explorer Essex we have under
Number
three and
Perfect. Number 3. Okay, I got it. So I want to tie in Explore Essex with the rec department. I don't know what number that is. I'm looking right now to see if they are close. I don't think they are because I read one and then I read the other quite a ways down.
Yeah, but they,
14 was also
14. So 14 and 3. It says in 1 that Essex Experience costs $8,900, and we're going to consolidate everything into the manager's budget, so that way it would have no impact on the overall budget. And then down in 14 it says, consider giving $1,100 to Essex Experience.
Yep. So if you look at, you go to number 3.
So that's a change in the budget,
No, so if you look at number 3,
right?
and go down to that last line item there, the 110, 530, 10, 850.
Okay.
Right now, Parks and Rec has $4,000 for events.
Right.
What we're proposing is to reduce that by $1,100. They would still have $2,900. That $1,100 would go into the community events and celebrations line that we're proposing in the manager's line item. So that $1,100 plus those other notes that are made up above total about $8,900, and that's not just for Explore Essex. That's
right. Yeah.
So we don't
Explore
have a
Essex-
total from Explorer.
in June
Explore,
19th.
Explore Essex
Juneteenth.
this past year we budgeted about $5,900 for.
15.
So that leaves about $3,000 for other events, whether that's Juneteenth, other things that might come up. But it's a total community events and celebrations line. We could then break that down further. Say, roughly 6,000 for Explore Essex and, 2,900, 3,000 for other things.
Right. The problem that I have with it is that it was specifically asked for to have a cost for Explore Essex because it was seen in so many places. And there's no definitive number given to what we spent on Explore Essex. And it wraps in now money from the rec department of a $4,000 surplus that we were talking about eliminating or leaving specifically for a town event that's not Explore Essex. I just would like to see those numbers separated, and I'd like to know what we spent on Explore Essex in 22.
We spent about $5,900 on Explore Essex.
Okay, so we're $3,000 short of budgetary money that's listed, right?
Juneteenth,
Juneteenth was 3,000,
about 3,000.
and then we want to add in 1,100, so that would bring it to 10,000.
No.
No.
The 89 includes the 1,100. So if you go through,
That
if
the
you go
math
through
doesn't
these,
add up.
yeah, if you go through these, this
There's
list right
3,000 for
here.
Juneteenth and 5,900 for Explore Essex. You just said
Where the 8,900?
that's 8,900.
Yep.
Add 1,100, that's $10,000.
The 1,100 is included in that 8,900. So
But
if you go through, so
Original money, Ethan, came from somebody else's budget that
It
they
was in-
used.
some of that,
1,100
5,900 came from Parks and Rec. So we're saying we'll take that from take the contribution from Parks and
From
Rec that
Parks
we
and
used
Rec.
this year, and we're going to assign that to a different line.
I don't agree with that.
Because that's what I'd always, I wanted everything in one.
And it's
One
not. It's
spot.
not. It's not broken down to explain that the $4,000
So if you look at
that's
14,
in the budget
if you
was
look at
used for
14,
that.
the $4,000 that was in Parks and Rec is being reduced to $2,900. That's the $1,100 that's being shifted to the Explore Essex specific line item.
To cover what we spent this year.
And so,
Projecting next year is what you're saying.
projecting next year.
Based on what we spent
Right.
this year.
That allows the rec department the opportunity to do their own activity.
So the other question that I had, because I had looked into participating in one of the events up there, the Explore Essex and some of the events that went on up there didn't produce any revenue.
Explore Essex, from the town side, we weren't trying to produce revenue.
Wasn't there an event that happened up there that was promoted by the town where you had to buy a booth? You had to pay substantial amount of money to have a booth.
That was through, so that Explore Essex was very much a partnership with our business community and the Essex Experience. And so the Essex Experience gave the space to hold the theater and have, not the theater, the stage, and to use that space. They charged for booths.
For booths.
Yep, so they charged for the booth space.
And the town didn't have any.
No.
So did we pay to use the space, or we just paid for what we would put into the event?
I will double check, but I'm almost positive we just paid for what we put into the event.
That's number one. My second question is about the police department. And I tried to use my book that we were first given with the number that's changed now. Because I had asked the question on our budget workshop about percentage of the overall budget. And I think it came in to somewhere like 56-44, I think, if I remember correctly. That's what
I forget for which split.
for the police department budget for town versus city.
Oh,
52 town, 48.
Originally, I think
Based on per
it was written out as the way that the numbers had fallen. So I'm curious now with this $101,000 change, where we stand
Doesn't
percentage
change
wise.
the overall budget for the what it costs to run the police department. It
Right,
just
but it
changes
changes-
the amount of revenue we get back.
Right,
So we need to make up that revenue in our tax rate.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it puts more burden on the town
It
taxpayer.
makes a correction to
And that number now, because like I said, I tried to see how this number would change. I didn't know exactly which line item was changing. So my question is, and this can be answered at another workshop, but what is the percentage moving forward paid for by the town taxpayer? Total budget.
it hasn't changed.
Well, it's changed by $101,000.
but that's really just an application of the revenue. So the expenses haven't changed, but the revenue that we had originally shown,
Decreased by $101,000.
because it was erroneously showing
Right.
100% of a collection when we're not making 100% of a collection because of the per capita ratio that we have with the city. So that's the reason for the reduction. It's a truing up of the actual revenue that we're going to recognize next year for the police contract. So nothing in the expense line items are going to change, but we're correcting the revenue that was not calculated properly in the previous iteration that you saw.
And that'll be in line with the per capita of each town, you're saying? Each
Yeah,
town
so
and
now
city?
now it's aligned with the.
So if I went and divided it by the amount of people, it would come out with the same percentage as the budget.
Should be following.
The town is still getting revenue from the
Correct.
city.
Yeah.
In their form of contribution to the police department
Yeah.
for their per capita, whatever that rate plays out to be now.
So they're paying.
My point is that it changed it by $101,000 from 2 weeks ago, that per capita rate. Because I'd asked that question.
I
at
think I
the
get. I
budget
think I
workshop.
don't think we'll be able to answer it tonight. I think
That's fine. I just wanted to puke it
what-
on you so you could write
Yeah, I
it
didn't
down on a
want to
piece of
repeat it.
paper.
I'm
And,
just going to say it back to make sure we're on the same page.
right.
So the police, the amount of police that's budget that it's just the police that's raised by taxes.
Correct.
That's on a per capita split of 48.52. Then there's also that 3.5%. The town, so we wrap that into the police budget to
Mhm.
account for it, but that's already being paid for by town taxes separately. That's your HR, that's your IT, that's your finance support, your manager support, all gets wrapped into that amount. So then there's going to be, roughly $100,000 coming in of revenue beyond that. So I think what you're saying, what we talked about at the first workshop, was taking that 48% on just the police and then adding, what is that, $100,000 of revenue
On top of it.
Is that's I think what you were asking for before and what you're trying to get now.
Yeah, I'm just, my question now is, how much has it changed and where do we stand? What are the numbers? What number is the town responsible for? I just want to make sure, and I be fully transparent, I was a strong advocate of this the whole time the MOU was going on about the deal. But the town of Essex and its constituents need to understand how much of the police department that they're paying for. I think that needs to be laid out very clearly in the budget when we present it.
Work on that.
Any other questions?
So is this where I would ask questions for this about all of these items?
Yep, you can do that. Yep.
Okay.
Rather than going through them
Just wanted to
individually.
make sure. I just wanted first on number 1 for Essex Rescue. I wanted to suggest that maybe the town considers funding them at a percentage like we do Tammy's.
If we do what?
Just forgot the 1% of the budget that we set aside for the businesses and the helpful, like Aunt Dot's place and place. I just can't think of the word.
We don't even set enough aside to cover what they're asking for.
Yeah, but we do that, and Tammy gives that to all the organizations and stuff. Maybe we might consider giving a percentage of our budget to Essex Rescue each year, so that they would have, and we would have a better idea per year of what our contribution to them might be, only because it has increased so much. Just something to consider. The Conservation Reserve Fund, how much are we budgeting for that this year currently?
About $8,000.
8,000?
Yep, down from 15.
Okay, perfect, thank you. My next thing I commented on was I noticed that the highway guys, you asked them about their wish list, kind of. I can't believe you're trying to keep those trucks for 10 years. I would 100%.
12, yeah.
I would, man, you gotta, once those things go out of warranty, you can blow anything that you might say really quick. Something happens to them. So I would strongly support them going back to staying in the warranty period and getting rid of the trucks, upgrading them when the warranties run out. Do we do that with the police cars?
I don't know if you know this. I want to say the police cars are. No, I take that back.
They're a lease, aren't
It's 3
they?
years. Isn't it?
Yeah, I feel
Yeah,
like
they
they're
have
more
a 3-year
like
3 years.
So they all stay under the warranty. Right?
I was going to say
Yeah,
lease, but
pretty
it's not
much.
a lease. It's just a 3-year lifespan.
Okay.
What it is?
So, and then I also noticed that Highway had some specific requests for the stormwater sections and everything, and I would fully support more than that. I think we should look at maybe 200,000 for that. We have the unprecedented opportunity for federal money that can be matched through the Clean Water Fund and the state of Vermont. I forget what the number is as far as what the state of Vermont has, but they have a ton of money that you have to go through their process that Aaron has laid out in this to do. So I would strongly support whatever they want. I mean, I think he's asking for like 100,000, 150,000. The more that you could put into that so that they can get some of these projects, preliminary engineering reports done so that you could apply for the grants, that will save a lot of money. So I just wanted to speak on their behalf.
Yeah, there is another process that we haven't started yet, the capital plan, which this year is likely going to include a request to increase our capital tax. We have a 2-cent capital tax now with losing 41% of our tax base. We're not going to get as much for that 2 cents. So I guess there's the question of, do you put it into your operating budget, which is what we're talking about today, or do you treat the capital as a separate, or is it from a different source? And so I don't know when.
We were talking this morning. We're looking at December 19th, your second meeting in December, to present a capital budget, capital plan.
Okay.
And so when do we need to warn the budget? Because the reason I'm asking is because there's going to be a point where you decide, okay, do we want to put that money in as a if we're going to go that way, go anywhere near increasing funding for stuff, do we put it into a operating budget transfer,
Yeah.
or
directly into capital and
or
discuss
hope
the
for a approval of a capital tax rate increase? So I think we're gonna have to have that. We can have that, certainly have that discussion
Okay.
at some point. But I think we need to have both of those plans. Yeah, that's why I'm asking, do we need to, if we need to warn the budget before we have the capital plan, then we can't do that juggling of, does it come
Yeah.
out of the operating budget, or does it come from the capital plan? So,
Okay.
January 30th is the, within that window, that's the day of that week, which is when you would warn town meeting. So that's when you kind of have to have your
everything has to be finalized.
absolute final number. Working backwards from there, we were looking at doing 2 public hearings for the budget this year. You're only required to do 1, but we've done 2 the past couple of years, and figuring with the big change this year, we were going to recommend doing 2. You could do it as soon as tonight. I don't know, I'd recommend that, but you could. Yeah, so probably, depending how you want to space it out, late December, early January, and then if you do the 30th in January, you would have 3 meetings. Your first Monday, actually it's going to be Tuesdays because of holidays, but your first and third Tuesdays plus that 5th Monday would be the meeting schedule in January, unless you want to add additional meetings.
Which we may have to.
Okay, so after tonight, we have 2 more meetings before we would have to have the first of our public hearings, in order to get 2 of them in before we warn. So that's, I think, what you just said. Sure, I understand it. Okay. That makes sense, Kendall?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to make sure that if you need the money, that you can either get it out of capital or you can get it out of the operating budget.
Yeah, and the other challenge, though, is that we need to increase the capital tax rate just to stay even. And so, yeah.
We've talked about staff a little bit with Andy, trying to get away from the operating transfers to capital and putting more of your capital expenses into the capital tax. There's a risk factor involved there of when you do it and how you time it, because if you say that you're going to take a bunch of capital transfers out of your operating budget and put it into your capital, you have to have the vote to have that capital tax increase. So
Yeah.
whether you do that all at once is quite risky in my opinion. If you wanted, looking at, are there ways to ask a question of, the capital tax, should the voters increase the capital tax a certain amount each of the next successive years? Do you do a vote in November, so you're prepared for the budget season for March? There's different ways to do it. But that's, one of the things that's on our mind. We're looking at, probably won't have final answer this year, but just another, the point is trying to get away from those operating transfers and
Okay.
keep stuff in capital for the most part.
Yeah.
And operating transfers carry a 1% penalty to them because they add to the human service fund.
Oh, geez.
Every dollar that you add as a capital transfer, you add another penny for the human services. So it actually is a more expensive way to do it, to put it through the operating budget.
Oh.
Slightly, maybe 1% more expensive. The other thing, just to be totally transparent about it, is that we've got a reappraisal coming up. Capital tax stays the same with reappraisal, and so our capital tax revenues will very likely go up with reappraisal. So there's a maybe some consideration there as to how far do you want to move it, in anticipation that it's going to generate a larger revenue.
The reappraisal.
Reappraisal happens. It's ironic that the last time the capital tax was changed from 1 cent to 2 cent was the same year that the reappraisal was done, 2007. So there was
I remember that.
it was a double. But then that rate stays the same. As long as your appraisal doesn't change. I mean, I've been paying $69.70 or whatever it is. I should made that number up every year since I've owned my house, or since 2007 anyway. So that's out there too. As another.
My concern is given this is our first budget without the city, we really need to watch those dollars and not try to spend what we don't really have right now.
Yeah.
And I would, rather see us tighten our belt now and then
And
further out.
And I would agree with that, except that we have 15% of our budget in the fund balance, and typically that's what we shoot for. But again, I think that we are in a very short window for both the ARPA projects and all the extra money from the COVID issues that is available. And I just wanted to make sure that the Public Works has the opportunity to take advantage of much of that as possible to leverage it for projects.
So there's a couple of things that follow on that, but the thoughts that come to my mind is whether we have the bandwidth, which is to chase after every penny we can right there, and I if we certainly do, I really understand. The other thing is this is a one-time thing. The money the infrastructure money that's available, or whatever the bucket of money is. It's not an ongoing thing, and so given that, I am more concerned about adding it to the tax rate is then you take it back out again, because it's a you mentioned it's a short time window, and is it because we're talking about July 1st of 2023 that any money we're talking about today is available, the first that it's available. I don't know what the time line is for the funding that's available right now.
I believe it's still 20. You have to have your projects all designated by like 2024, I believe, something like that. It's a pretty short time window.
And the other thing is, if there's something critical that staff wants to go after, they can come to us and ask us to use some of our fund balance to do it.
Okay. Maybe that's
we
the
can
approach.
make that choice. It may be a hard choice, and but it may be the right choice for a given project. So there are after we have all this discussion, I'm going to open the door to the public to talk about it too. But I'm kind of aligned with Don on the fact that this may not be but I understand, right? There's a golden opportunity. Do you want to pass it up just because you're afraid the budget's not going to pass? I don't know.
So maybe that's the tack that I'll switch to at this point, because I have been fairly vocal about trying to get public works and projects and stuff. But again, I'm not Dennis or Aaron, so maybe this is the opportunity to ask Aaron come to the board with some proposals or with a specific one, because he knows. I mean, right in his memo, he's like, we've got some big projects, and you can see your budget. You had a stormwater drain fail, and it cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix it one time quickly. And so maybe put a little thing on Aaron to say, what's your wish list? You've got an advocate on the board. Where would you like a little bit of money to go at short term with the projects?
I think that's coming with the capital plan.
It's going to be listing the capital. Aaron said that if you were to do it, he's appreciative of it. He also understands that we're in a crunch, so whether or not this is the year, we can see. But he said that professional services would be a helpful line. That's going to be for stormwater. Professional services in the operating budget will help with some of these small projects, moving them through, having some of that oversight, having some of the engineering work. But most of it you're going to see in the capital, with the project list and things that are coming up and areas that are, whether to study them or figure out the hazard areas or the at-risk areas and go after them that way. That's mostly going to be in your capital.
Okay. So, thank you.
Yep.
I didn't want to go again until Tracy had a chance to ask her. Okay. I have two questions. If we went to $15, I don't know how fast you do math. What would the amount for Essex Rescue be if we went to $15 per capita instead of their 18? Do you have any idea?
$30,000.
504 people from the latest census.
Yeah, roughly $30,000.
Yes.
I didn't mean to.
Right? There's 10,541 or
165,
something.
166. Okay. 11.5.
I'm just really concerned about
My
this
guess is
Essex
30.
Rescue.
Would save about $34,500. I mentioned in here, if I can jump in, I mentioned in here been having conversations with some of the other managers. I know some of the other legislative bodies in the area have similar concerns. I don't know if I had to read tea leaves, I'd probably say everyone is unhappily ready to accept the price this year, but going to be looking for more direction and oversight, representation on the board, those types of things. More to come on that. I know you've stepped up to have some of those conversations. But if I had to gauge what's happening from the other communities, talking to my fellow managers, that seems to be the sentiment. And it's one of those things where I think my recommendation would be that you go, all 5 member municipalities go hand in hand. It's going to start getting weird if one says we'll fund at this rate and the other one says we'll fund at this rate, and then you're kind of paying for different.
So what do
services.
the rest of your municipalities bill at then, or contribute at?
18 per capita is the request.
But that's their request. But what? Okay, but do you know what they currently do?
They're all,
It's all
so it's per
per
capita
capita.
across the same thing. So I think we're
It's
at
just
10,
different.
I think we're at $10.91 per capita this year.
Each town has like so let's just use Underhill for an example. So Underhill is only a portion of Underhill.
Right, I know.
So they only pay for 6,000 residents or whatever, $6,000. Yeah, but I wanted to jump in on the Essex Rescue thing because I didn't have a chance to kick you an email about it, but they didn't respond to the dispatch question.
Did I answer your question first?
Yeah, I'm just concerned about this. And looking at what they sent, and looking at the fact we have no say. And I mean, I love Essex Rescue. I just don't. I can't see going with that huge amount this year. But and my other thing before we go back to Essex Rescue is the money for the library at that $15,000. I think would leave it in the budget and not give it to the Essex Free Library at this time.
Yep.
I mean, 15,000 doesn't sound like a lot of savings, but every little bit right now is going to help us. Go for Essex Rescue. I'm sorry. I just
wanted to throw that out there before we moved on to something deeper.
No, and to answer your question, it would be, I think they said it would cost about $110,000 is what they were estimating to do dispatch. That would get added into the total cost. So
For everybody.
they're for everybody, but then it would,
Revenue would be split with us in the city.
yeah. So it's not.
Well, it offsets the $101,000 we just saw in lost revenue.
Well, not really, because you'd be paying you'd be paying that
But
$110,000. Let's say that you said Underhill is about 6,000 people.
Right.
Let's, for the sake of easy math, let's say Westford, Underhill, and Jericho are all 5,000.
Right.
15,000. Town and city are 22,000. So we'd be getting $100,000 of revenue, paying 50. So you're getting roughly 50 cents on the dollar.
Well, let's just use the same example and say that there's 100,000. Let's just say let's use a number as 100,000, right? Essex makes up. Let's say Essex and the city both make up 20%, right? So we're paying
20%.
20% of the total 100,000. We're paying 20% more in Underhill per capita, right?
Well,
We're all paying $18 a piece.
total population for those 5 areas, let's call it
Yeah, but $18 is $18,
40,000 people.
right?
Yep.
$18 is $18. The town of Essex and the city of Essex Junction, now split with the police department, is paying whatever that $100,000 is more than any other town because of the per capita split. So we're covering 3 other towns, Essex and Essex Junction. We're paying more per capita, maybe not on paper,
You can dispatch
with dispatch.
for some stuff. But I think not
For all of Essex Rescue.
I remember. I don't know if you remember. I feel like I'm drawing a blank. I can't remember if it was Essex Rescue or one of those towns, but some of them contract with Shelburne for part of their dispatch services. I'd have to get more information.
well,
I don't
part of
know.
Westford has Fairfax,
Has Fairfax. Yes, that's right. So that 5,000 people is
and
probably
the far part of Underhill has Lamoille. So.
Yep, and part of Jericho has Richmond.
But that doesn't include.
That 5,000. That's for each community. Probably
That-
more like 2,500.
Well, right, but either way you look at it, their total operating budget's what, $1 million? Almost.
Essex Rescue.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
I think it's over $1 million this year. I'd have to double check to see what they came in final. I haven't heard or seen anything or even response.
That should be right in here. You wait, go ahead.
But anyway, my point is, I don't care if it's $5. It's revenue that we're losing out on, and we're paying for it. And anybody in that district or in this whatever service area that's paying $18 per capita is in benefit of the dispatch service in that area. In my opinion. But I just think it's something that we shouldn't overlook. When we asked them about it, they gave us a number.
So we can get
Yeah, I'll try to get more information on that.
the information on that. Because I brought this up before as well. That, right, Essex now it's Essex and Essex Junction now are paying for the dispatch.
Whatever the split is.
For all of, and so, and I don't know, right? If it comes out to pennies on the dollar, then it's may not be worth the overhead to do it. But we should have those numbers rather than just.
Yeah. We can get the numbers. It opens up a tricky, complex argument where I've heard from these other municipalities, not directly, but I've heard that part of their concerns are most of the call volume is in Essex and Essex Junction. So
drop the
they
service.
feel like they're off you. They're paying
You know what I
more
mean?
per capita, not getting as
Drop the service if you don't think you're getting your money's worth. That's my recommendation. I mean, if I was paying for something that I didn't think I was getting any use of.
I'm not saying they don't think they get their money's worth. I'm saying that they can argue and have argued that they think.
I don't call the police.
That they feel like Essex and Essex Junction benefit more from that per
I
capita
know.
rate. You also argue that we're closer. We don't have to travel as far. We're not. It goes back and forth, and we'll get the numbers. But if it comes down to a few cents, is
their
it worth
total expenses for 2022 was $1,151,560.
I remembered that. I knew it was over $1 million. I just couldn't quote the number.
What you want to know?
And that's for last year. That's 21, right?
2022.
22. So they got their budget done, or their fiscal year done.
All right, any other specific questions?
You're
Right,
still following up on
so,
insurance for tree farm property?
Yeah, so I made an initial contact, and the coverage is for the entire land area around there. I have not gone as far to discuss them. Would be. And we were supposed to meet with VLCP with a handful of questions and general renewal discussion on in December.
And I didn't understand number 16, Greg. Sometimes it's long. It says, follow whether the city approves joining Winooski Valley Park District. The city of Essex voted to join Winooski Valley Park District. The dues request from them was $37,342, less than the $39 that was originally budgeted. What does that mean for us?
So the west from Winooski Valley Park is 37,000.
Okay.
And the issue is that Essex Junction was not part of Winooski Valley Park District. So they had budgeted, assuming that Essex Junction was going to join, and we had budgeted 39,000 based on that.
Okay.
And I can't remember if that was a number from Winooski Valley Park District or a projection based on a breakdown of what we need to do. If Essex Junction had not voted to join the park district, their formula is based on per capita and I think grand list to some extent. So they would have been losing 10,000 people and $11 million at the grand list that would have then have to been spread across the remaining population in town. So if they hadn't joined, that 39 or 37 would have been higher. I don't know how much higher, but it would have been higher.
I didn't understand. Okay, thank you.
So that's a good thing.
I got a question. I can't remember exactly what it was because I messed up and I forgot my binder at home that had all the color Sharpie and highlighter in it.
Mhm.
But I had asked a question about and it was some sort of insurance or something that changed by about $70,000 from what we had budgeted and what we thought it was going to be this year. remember what it was like buildings, something with buildings. It went from, 220 to 290,000, even though the previous years had only gone up by $10,000 every year. And I had asked a question about if we were sure about that. I got it highlight. I can bring it to this next meeting, or I'll send you an email.
Yeah. I don't remember it specifically.
It was
either.
written down on our. It's in the minutes. I can pull it up in the minutes. Written
Well,
down.
all of the questions that we brought down, that we raised were here.
Oh, the hell was-
Let's see, it's specifically
I couldn't remember.
question about the insurance rate, number 18.
18.
Yeah, I thought that was about the VLCT.
Yeah, it will be encapsulated within the VLCT items. So we haven't
About
had
the
any-
rate. Was that what it was? Was rate?
Well, I think it was actually related to the credit as to whether that should be shown as revenue. 'Cause we don't know what that's going to be until.
Right.
So it looked like we were
Losing $70,000.
right.
Yeah, so with the
that's the same
VLCT credits, what's happened is that, we'll receive a credit for all the prior history that VLCT is experiencing in their insurance plan overall throughout the whole state. So it's really nothing that we can budget for. It's nothing that we can really gauge on internal information. It's kind of a variable out of our control based on their portfolio. So, we've been looking to kind of continue keeping that in the expense line item, not really call it revenue because, it's been anywhere from, a few $1,000s to maybe $50,000 in a given fiscal year, and just really nothing that we can, point to 3 or 4 elements and say, oh, okay, this is our estimate. It's just all over the map depending on what year it is. Yeah.
So I guess my follow up to that was, how did we predict the large change? I can find the packet because I gotta know the numbers now because I've still looked at way too many numbers. We can move on and I'll find it in
Yeah,
there.
or you can bring it back to
Or bring it back to that
any-
meeting.
any-
Yeah.
Bring you the
And I'll take a
information
look
with
back
the
into it.
actual
I don't
numbers.
remember it. I don't remember it specifically for buildings, but
We didn't look at any numbers that only 1 or 2. So.
Do you have any other specific questions?
Well, I would just note that Essex Rescue, looking through their budget, that they're looking at the same increases that we are, their fuel, their health insurance, and I mean, so their budget's pretty good. I mean, there's a couple things in there to question, but you never know when you're going to need an ambulance, and it is Essex Rescue. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, right. So I am going to open this up to the public to comment now. Nobody in the room but us chickens. Anybody online like to make a comment about any aspect of the budget?
Can we switch back over so we can see who's?
I don't see any hands up.
Thank you, Scott.
So, yes, with no hands up, do we want to go through and try to answer some of these questions so that we don't have to continue talking about them? One, I know the Essex Rescue, I think there's more discussion going to be had with them, and I think that's going to continue on. Based on that, we're not going to do the next agenda item.
No, I do have some good comments when we get there.
Okay. So conservation fund, the question that was raised is that has been historically funded at 15,000 a year since it was put in place. The proposal from staff was to do 8,000 this year, and I raised the question: do we fund it at all? Can we answer that? Can we?
So originally that was funded by everybody in Essex, right?
Yes,
15,000.
and the reason it was turned back to 8,000 this year is the per capita, not per capita,
Is that the
Grand list.
grand list.
is that the per capita number that
It was by the grand list number, which is 59%, 41%.
Yes.
So, you know, and you know, $8,000 is a very small drop in the bucket on a $15 million budget, but it's still,
Every little bit helps.
it helps. They will sort it up. I guess, do we want to come to a consensus as to whether to keep that money in there this year or take it out? We'll have opinions.
Well, I think what they said would be harder if we didn't do it this year to put it back in.
You could do something. I mean, there's about $8,000 between 0 and 8. You don't have to fund it at the 8 that we proposed. You don't have to cut it all the way to 0.
What if we did 50%?
4,000.
4,000.
I like that.
But your last expense out of that was 4,500
Roughly.
roughly.
And remind me, what's the balance of that?
We're close to, I want to say about 50,000, just under
Yeah,
50.
I thought it was like, upper 40s, something
Yeah.
like that.
Everybody's good with 4,000? That, so we don't need to vote. We just have a consensus because we'll vote on the whole number later, but
Changes.
make that change. The Explore Essex funding, I know we had discussion about that before. This is really just a moving of accounts. There's no, are we okay with funding nominally Juneteenth and Explore Essex with this $8,900 line item all consolidated?
It's just gonna sound awful. But I'd rather it go 5,000 and 3,000 and throw up the $900. Given that there was much discussion after Out and About Essex or about things we could change and save on. So I'm just saying that I would go with the 8,000. And it sounds really awful to say take away $900, but there's changes that can be made that where we could have saved money. I did participate in both events, so I can tell you firsthand.
Okay. Go ahead, Ian.
I would like to be somewhere closer to 7,500, and I'd like to keep the $4,000 with the Parks and Rec because I tried to also participate in the event, and due to at the time for the scale that I want to do, the price that it cost to be in the event was more than I wanted to spend, and I don't understand how the town is trying to put on a cliche farmer's market and not make any revenue off from it. So I don't
Nothing to do with the farmer's market, Ethan.
yeah, it wasn't the farmer's market. It was the Explore Essex where you could buy a booth for
From the
$500.
Essex experience, it had nothing to do with
It was a town promoted event on our website, advertised through the town.
Sorry.
You know, so I've been in this community for 4 years. We don't have a farmer's market put on by a town like every other town does. That is free. That takes donations from the vendors to pay for the event and has the possibility to create a revenue. And I just see money being dumped away, and I don't see any revenue coming from it. I mean, the turnouts have been decent, but I wouldn't say that people are raving about what was going on. So that's just my 2 cents on it. I'd really like to see the $4,000 stay in the Parks and Rec, for the main reason that the Parks and Rec director specifically stated that her team is working on, putting something together, and they would need the funding there if they were to do something. So I hate to take money from them.
Tracy?
But I guess just curious around to support additional community events. Appreciate funding to remain in the EPR admin operating to support additional community events. Does that include Explore Essex? And if the funding is available through ComDev or the manager's budget, does it matter whether it's in EPR or because the pot of money is there, right, to fund these events? People are going to be involved in throwing out ideas and planning and coordinating regardless of what line item that sits in. So I guess I go back to our comment from the last meeting around, let's have one line item
Right.
that's around community events and celebrations
Yep.
that gets used regardless of, whether it's deemed Parks and Rec or, it's the community. That's the overall goal.
And the thought process behind putting this together the way it is, including some money still set aside for Parks and Rec, was that the stuff at the manager's office would be those town-wide, almost everybody department is involved. So your Explore Essex, your Juneteenth. The money for Parks and Rec that's proposed to stay in there is separate. Could it go towards Explore Essex if we really felt the need for that $2,900 and there was a great idea from Recreation? Sure, we would talk about it, we would look at it. But the idea is more that, is there a Parks and Rec type events that they would do, like the haunted Halloween walk?
And their Easter egg hunt.
Or the spring egg hunt. Like the National Night Out that the police put on. That's still in the police department line item. So we were trying to take that, these little buckets of Explore Essex money and put them into one and calling it the community events and celebrations with Juneteenth. And really looking at those are probably the two. Maybe there's some flexibility in there. It's budgeting, so it's helpful. Don, to your point, if it's 5,000 for one and 3,000 for other, it's helpful. But if it ends up being 5,500 and 2,500, it's still coming from that same pot of money. And so that 20, so yeah, police would still have their National Night Out money separate. Parks and Rec is exploring some ideas if they're keep that $2,900 to do smaller Parks and Rec type things.
And I guess my follow-up to that is, if I remember correctly, in the EPR budget, like the Easter egg hunt, all of these things were broken out into individual line items. Should they just have a special events line item instead of breaking it out so granularly? It just seems...
Just take everything. So take the police money, take the community money, take the Parks and Rec money, and just put it all into one everything events line?
I'm specifically speaking about Parks and Rec.
Okay.
So if they're breaking it out for, should they have just a Parks and Rec events rather than breaking out, this is for Easter, this is for Halloween, this is for whatever. If we're doing that for more community-wide events, shouldn't we also be doing that within?
Well, I think, to speak accounting-wise, like, all of these events would end up on a similar line item in terms of presentation. But in terms of, individual budgeting, the software allows us to say, hey, we want 500 for this event, 1,000 for this event, 500 for something we don't know yet, and, things like that. But I think presentation-wise, you're going to end up on that singular line item within Parks and Rec for their group, their host of activities that they want to do.
I'm trying to pull up the Parks and Rec budget because I can't remember.
I don't think you broke it down that way. That's
if
why
they have a breakdown of where they're.
It might have been last year, but it used to say Easter egg hunt and a couple other things that events that they had put on.
Right.
It was like $800.
I guess, approaching it from
So
the point of, we're trying to streamline as much as possible. We're trying to break out as much as possible to, reduce rather than add into. If it is working on ideas and possibilities, couldn't that come back to us as a plan and we could use fund balance for that? And then add it after it's already set up and it's an ongoing thing?
Yeah, I think if there's, uses that the board would approve, maybe if there's an add-on event, something new that comes up, a new idea that's developed, that's outside of an approved budget, there's always that room and flexibility to incorporate a fund balance. So, I think that'd be or a specific event down the road if something came up in that realm.
And it's not a huge amount, but
Greg,
at
it's
the
in
same
there,
time,
page
we're saying every
82.
penny matters, so throwing an idea out.
So I guess my thoughts on specifically this Parks and Rec question, there's a couple of things I want to say. One is, I think we should focus on the number, not on how the accounting is done. I know on the Explore Essex, the reason that we asked for what we asked for is because it was spread around and it was really hard to see. I think putting all that together is one. Whether something's in one or three line item within Parks and Rec, I think that's Dan's problem from an
It's-
accounting standpoint, and we should
It's
just
listed as community events and celebrations.
And I also wanted to comment on this $2,900 came from. This line item used to be $7,500 for the Memorial Day Parade, which Ally had no control over. It just was a complete pass through. She wasn't even involved in any of the planning or any of that. So this is just from Ally's standpoint is new money for her. And it was reduced to 4,000 because that's the per capita or per
Pretty close enough.
grand list, right? The grand list reduction, so that the the portion that the village was contributing to the town amount that went into that $7,500 was pulled out. So that's where the 4,000 came from. And 11,000 was pulled out to slide it over to the Explore Essex thing, so it would be more. Obviously, that's where it was. That actually wasn't previously funded from that account. Sorry.
You said 11,000.
1,100. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. And so
My mind went, what?
And so, sorry, yeah, 1,100. So this $2,900, and I watched Ally when we asked her about it, and she said it would be wonderful to have some money that we could use to start planning events. Our Parks and Rec department has been through the ringer with co-location and the how that fell apart, and I really want to try to support those folks if we can. So I'm very much in favor of leaving this $2,900 in there and let them do as they wish with it.
Yep.
And I hearing what Don said about the Explore Essex and the opportunity for reducing costs, I'm in line with going to the 8,000. I'm not okay with going down as far as 7,500. And so that's my thinking. That's, I guess.
I think you're going to get a good return from Ally. He's going to come up with some great ideas, I think.
And just from a sense of feeling of support.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to hurt any more of our staff.
Sounds good.
I just wanted to add one more time that I'd really like to give Ally the $4,000. I'll leave it at that.
So is this a question we can answer tonight? Do we want to take a consensus here? There's a couple of questions here, right? One is how much we want to put for Juneteenth, and it can be separate questions because it's at this point it's free money, right? Do we want to reduce that number from 8,900 to what Don proposed, 8,000? I agree with that. I see Tracy nodding her head. Kendall, Ethan, I know Ethan.
I'm just gonna ask again because I forgot honestly, Greg. But what was the breakdown between Essex? Excuse me, Explore Essex and Juneteenth.
5 and 3.
The cost amount?
Yeah.
I'd have to.
What he said earlier was
Yeah.
5,900.
5,900 and 3,000.
Roughly,
5,900.
It was 5,800.
58.
We did for events, and I'm double checking my spreadsheet here that we use for that. I got a pair. Sorry. Apologize for my language.
It happened to
Okay.
I had thought that there was some Parks and Rec money involved in that. I think there might have ended up being some, but it's not in the spreadsheet I put together, so I'm gonna have to dig to get you a final amount, but yeah.
I'm just curious. I mean,
1,000 for Explore Essex, and probably about 3,000 for.
That was part of the conversation that we had when we did the budget was why was there money coming out of the rec department for these other things. So I guess if I'm understanding this right, this will help me come to a consensus with the board tonight. Is if this is taken into community events and celebrations for let's say 8,000, right? And money was used last year from Parks and Rec to cover events. Let's just think theoretically, right? If we only give her 2,900, was she getting any other revenue back that went elsewhere last year? Per se, does that make sense?
So each budget year has its own thing. She only gets 2,900. You don't get leftover money. It goes into fund balance. If there's any leftover money, it just goes into fund balance, and it doesn't unless somebody asks for it.
So last year it was out of 7,500 that it came out of.
So that 7,500
because the parade didn't
went to
happen.
the village.
Went to the parade. Didn't have anything to do
Well,
with it.
they had a parade last year. It was the 2 years before that they didn't have a parade.
So that money went into fund balance, or we spent it somewhere else.
We'd have to check.
I'm just curious how much we're gonna lose out of the rec department, but I guess my answer is $1,100.
That's what's
That's the answer.
currently proposed.
That's what's on the table,
We
yeah.
can
I'm just trying to understand how this, it changes everything from these others to zero and puts it in this one. So I didn't know. I didn't see anything. I didn't know if any of these had come in from the Parks and Rec. It just says the Parks and Rec 4,000 includes a reference to Essex experience, but everything included.
So
Essex
each of them
experience.
say where they came from. It says econ dev, com dev, Parks and Rec. That's says where the line item, what the departments were that those line items came money came from.
Right, but the total is about $13,000. So. 4,000, 5,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,500. Right?
No, so if you take each of the items in the subtracted group, so there's a 300 taken out, another 1,500 taken out gets you to 1,800. ComDev, the third item, is another 1,000, gets you to 2,800. ComDev special programs, 5,000, gets eliminated, so that gets you to 7,800. And then this last $1,100 piece from Parks and Rec gets you to the 8,900 that's being created in that one single line item under the town manager's budget area.
Correct. So the total of all of them together is another $2,900, right?
If you include that leftover money in Parks and Rec,
Yeah.
another 2,900.
Right.
8,900, 2,900, yes. Or
So it's 13,700. Okay.
So what I'm proposing is that we cut the community events in the manager's budget to 8,000, leave the 2,900, and
Yep.
and Parks and Rec. See a couple of nodding heads. See more nodding heads than not.
Yeah, you only need 3. So,
So we're gonna leave 2,900 in Parks and Rec
Yep.
and reduce the community event celebration to 8,000.
Yep.
Is that what? I'll go with that.
All right. Library budget 15,000 that used to go to 15,000 that used to go to the Brownell Library. A couple of questions associated with that. One is we could cut it completely. We could say, well, let's also hit that with the same grand list and cut it back to 8,000. Which would be consistent with what's been proposed in other areas where we've done that. Caitlin says that she would hire additional staff to extend hours into the evening. One that was what she would do with the 15,000 if it was only 8,000. One thing that we've done many times in the past when we've added new headcount is to only half fund it in the first year and have it start January 1st instead of July 1st. So that could be a possibility. Still get the a benefit, but starting 6 months later. Or we could cut it completely because it's a tough year. I don't know for folks or we could just go with some other number. But I know Kendall, you're the one that proposed putting it back and keeping it in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be transparent. I'm a big library supporter. I mean, they really made a huge difference in the community during COVID. I mean, everything else shut down, and the library came up with all kinds of things to keep the community engaged. And a lot of people that couldn't do anything else went to the library. So, and she provided a lot of information that shows you that you're really getting a good deal compared to all the other communities around. I mean, we're just about dead last. So I see the library as being a big bang for your buck when it comes for the money that you spent.
You guys have any thoughts?
I'm just trying to get a.
So Don, I wasn't clear on what you said before. Did you say you wanted to cut it completely?
Cut it completely
Okay.
this year.
Yeah.
I agree with Don to cut it for cost savings, and if we do decide to fund it at any funding, I say that we fund it at 38.6% because that's what we funded the rec department at. So
Interesting.
compared to last year, we used to give the village 7,500, and now we're giving the village 15,000.
We're
That we'd
not
like to
giving
keep.
oh, sorry.
We used to give $15,000.
Yes.
That now we're keeping. I don't think it's fair to treat departments evenly if we decide to keep the money and run it at 38.6%.
But this is already double that though, right? Because we cut the 7,500 that we used to give to the
Right.
village was already cut back to the 4,000.
But that wasn't a cut. That was a proposed budget. That wasn't what we used to give. That wasn't the last fiscal year's budget.
Right, but you're doing an apples and oranges comparison
Oh,
by taking the entire 15,000 and saying that. I'm confused.
well, we used to before the proposed budget this year. We gave the village $7,500. That was towards Essex
The parade. Yep.
Parks and Rec for either town together, separated. We dropped it down to $4,000 for the proposed budget.
Mhm.
But 2,900 is only 38.6% of the 7,500
Yeah, but the 1,100 is still there. It's just somewhere else. Yeah. Right.
out of the rec department. Right? We can fund the community events and celebrations at 38.6% to last year too. If we want to go, I don't understand how we can prioritize certain departments over the other. I mean, what makes one more important than the other for an event?
Well, and it's not like that when the Parks and Rec budget for the Memorial Day Parade, that was a simple pass-through. Our Parks and Rec never saw that money.
Right.
It was just, it's going into this line item and immediately going out to the city to specifically fund the Memorial Day Parade.
For the town. to
So if
participate.
if that money isn't going to the Memorial Day Parade going forward, it's in addition to Parks and Rec. It's not like we're funding them less. It's that we're giving them more money to do with for Parks and Rec benefit for the town over and above what they would have gotten.
Because we're losing a community event. We're no longer part of the Memorial Day Parade.
Well, that's a
We
big
never were.
conversation. I mean, it wasn't
From a budget standpoint, in a town who pays to participate in an event. Just saying how it looks on paper. You know what I mean?
But we already heard that, like, our Parks and Rec staff had no involvement in that event to begin with. So
Why did you guys approve the budget last year to pay them $7,500?
Because we were being buddy with our
Okay,
town members who lived in the
I
village.
guess I'm satisfied with that.
And it's the same, basically, isn't it, with that 15,000 for the library? They went to the village, the library never really saw it anyway,
Yeah,
right?
it's exactly
Is that
the
right?
exactly the same situation.
Situation?
Right. That's why I have some concern about funding the whole thing. Sure. I also need to say that my wife's a library trustee, so they not weigh in on this question.
I remember the year that it was from the floor that it was voted to increase it, and it was passed by a majority of the people present. Fortunately, majority of the people present were city residents now, so just Just a bit of history. But anyway,
So Tracy, do you have a thought on whether this should be funded or by how much? Or
I'm going to try not to go off on too much of a narrative, but I've actually been involved in a capstone project which calculated and essentially defended the value of libraries within our local communities. Libraries are and should continue to be the hubs of our community. They are an equalizer for underprivileged and socioeconomic disadvantages. I do think that we should fund at some level, but I don't think 15,000 should stay in.
Fair enough. I would do the percentage of the per capita. That sounds fair.
there's a proposal to move it to 8,000 ish. Think it wants to cut it more.
I'd say 57.90, but it's just me.
they just lost me. Sorry, you just lost me with these numbers.
I'm sorry, Don. There was only one thing that I paid attention to in school, and it was mathematics.
No, I don't know. So you're basing it.
I'm basing it on the percentage that we cut the Parks and Rec based on.
Okay, I guess, what is your
7,500.
percentage that you're taking?
38.6% of the level of the whole of the funding that was previously there at 15,000 is
How much?
it's $5,790. It's the same way we funded the rec department.
Would you compromise at 5,000 and we save?
Yeah,
10?
5,000 is good by me. I mean, I don't want to cut anything this year, and I really wish we didn't have to cut anything this year. But I'm just throwing it out there when I brought this up, and when I brought up the Parks and Rec thing, compared to the way we're funding the community events and celebrations.
I can.
If we're gonna, I just want to spit this out, and then I'll be quiet for the rest of the night because everybody's probably heard enough of me. But if we're gonna look at this community as a whole, and we're gonna make sacrifices, I don't. And I'm not saying this as a biased way that anybody has any intention of funding anything differently. But if we really come to the senses of cutting things, I don't want to see one thing lost. I don't want to see one department lose employees. I don't want to see a vehicle get sold or anything like that. I want to see even decreases where it can be common ground and sustainable for the departments that we're talking about. And that's just want a little bit of fairness. I know we're all being fair and we're all together. I just think that we should really look at everything as a whole and say we're going to start making cuts. And when we're making cuts, I know situational is different with let's say we're talking about the police budget or plowing snow this winter. I understand that there's a level of need there, but community involvement and extracurriculars, I wouldn't cut one before I cut another. No.
I could just add, I just want to add some clarity. We keep saying the word cut. We've actually presented a budget that has a certain amount for the library already. The proposal here is really for a $15,000 addition to that original budget. So, we're not talking about a further cut or a different level. We're considering an addition to the original budget presentation, just for clarity.
Yeah. And we are looking at this item because this was originally given right to the Brownell Library. So.
So this is the $5,790 increase on the budget as it stands today.
Yes, this would be from the original proposal that you saw.
Right.
Yeah, I don't support any.
The whole.
I don't support any increases. I'm talking. I was.
So what was proposed?
Confused. I was confused. Let me just clarify real quick. I was just confused that I thought that this $15,000 was in the budget that we saw.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Kendall suggested we put it back in. So this is
Okay.
a discussion of whether to put it back in and or how much.
Yeah.
And so they're
Not this year.
Using the
why-
same logic
Thank
for Parks and Rec money or anything is that it was originally passed through. They didn't see it at all, and that we could keep a portion of it to benefit the town residents. So I would.
Yeah, I'm sorry I went down that hole so deep, but I just don't want to cut anything that's in the budget. But I don't want to add anything that's not in the budget because we can't.
There you go.
And if we do cut things that are in the budget, I'd like to cut them fairly. Now a little bit from here, and here, and here, and here. I don't want to take everything from one spot.
So two of you want to leave the budget as proposed. Two of you want to increase it. My wife's a library trustee.
I'm happy taking the 15,000 out if that's what you're saying.
I'm sorry.
I'm happy with what I originally said. Not this year.
With that explanation and conversation, I'm actually leaning in that direction as well.
Okay.
But I do think that this should be revisited
Yeah.
for the future.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So
Just-
it's like no 15, no ladder.
I think we have a lot of catch up to play next year with another increased budget. You know, it's not. I just, hate to see
It's gonna be a couple of years.
go hammer on everything and.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe we'll hear some public comment on this.
Huh?
You will.
This is what we're talking about.
Oh, but we don't.
I think the highway question will see more capital budget. Let's see, I'm trying to think. I don't think there's anything else.
AT,
here.
this number 5, the IT fund balance.
All right, there was a question of whether to use fund balance because there was we were told that there's a hump in the amount of equipment that needs to be purchased this year because of equipment that was purchased during COVID and experienced a lot of use, needs to be replaced as a result of there being a pandemic. And I asked the question, well, does that prompt us to consider that a one-time event that we could use or should use fund balance for? The recommendation from staff is to not do that, but then to intend to, I guess, smear the next set of replacements out over a slightly longer period of time in order to accommodate that. So I don't know if anybody has any.
So that doesn't impact Rob's proposed budget then.
So it wouldn't either way wouldn't impact the budget. It's a question of whether you add revenue in there from fund balance to offset it, to take it out of the tax rate.
Tax, yeah.
Because presumably you're not going to have to buy this much equipment next year. That's why I kind of consider it a little bit of being a one-time event, that it's a reaction to the use of equipment through the pandemic, and hopefully we're not going to have that reoccurring, and so that the expense for this particular line item should be smaller next year, rather than increasing the taxes to fund a higher. Should we cut it off using fund balance to pay a portion of it, so that it looks more like it doesn't look like as much of a decrease next year. I mean, it wouldn't affect the, you don't add it into the taxes you need to collect this year.
Well, the staff didn't recommend using it, so that's probably a good idea.
If staff says.
Yeah, just the other thing to consider is the budget that we presented had $600,000 in fund balance proposed to be used. There's a conversation to be had later on of, is that the right amount, and general fund balance to the general bottom line. It's an option, if not here, somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts on that, or you just leave it alone? I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Right as proposed. Lanford monitoring went down. Okay. C-click fix. We're not double counting.
Do we have a number on that as far as they get a lot of use out of that in C-click?
Yeah, I know they like it and appreciate it. Beyond that anecdote, I can't tell you if there's a dollar amount or the number of uses they get or tickets they get, but it is something that they speak highly of and is valuable to them.
Okay.
And we did get the past year's fund balance memo. we'll get an update on that sometime in December. So we'll presumably have that before we go. Make adjustments based on that if you want to or need to. We addressed the community event thing, Parks and Rec. We don't have any influence over Front Porch Forum's invoicing model.
I'll just throw that Front Porch Forum out there is that they're starting to look a little bit like Essex Rescue, in that they don't tell you what they
They're not even they're a for-profit company, so they're I don't know. I don't know if they're privately owned or if they're. Yeah, that's I always think that's an odd thing where they're asking for donations, but they're not.
Well, price of internet's going up, Price of internet's going up.
I don't know.
I'm just kidding.
Free farm insurance, and you mentioned that before. There's going to be more discussion with the LCP on that. There's a question of should that insurance be shared or partly funded by the city? Is that the question we're asking?
Yeah, part of what we're going to do when we sit down with the LCT is just go through our whole insurance policy and see, are we missing anything? Are they charging us for the 99 acres as opposed to 50 acres? And just kind of do a sort of a cleanup, sort of a review, sort of a, do we have the right vehicles? Is there
Right.
savings here, adjustments here and there? So that's part of that conversation.
Okay, and I don't see any other items here that we can make decisions on. Any other thing else anybody wants to bring up that we?
Can I ask other considerations? If the senior van, the city decides to share it for the whole year, wouldn't that increase in revenue go into Parks and Rec's budget? Because that's where the funding comes from.
It would go into the senior line.
Part of her, right? I'm just trying to make Ethan feel a little happier if there's a possibility that would increase.
I'm gonna donate a bunch of land to put on the biggest Parks and Rec event ever this year. So. On the kiddie fair with a choo-choo train, right?
That's what the police department is.
So,
I'm just picking.
having heard all of that discussion, are there any comments from the public? The budget. So disappointing that we're not here.
Awful quiet public.
Well, I'm starting to think you should tell everybody I want to up the budget by $1 million so you get some people to start commenting.
I called people and sent emails and talked to neighbors.
Just thank you all for your hard work on it.
Yes.
Truly
No,
appreciate it.
thank you
Thanks
for
for your
your review of this.
consideration,
Very nice.
Can I ask a question about the whole budget workshop that we just did? Have we done anything spectacular for advertisement of what we're doing? Like, I know we post the same thing that everybody gets to see weekly, but I guess my question is there anything we can do more to get some feedback?
So there was that Front Porch Forum posted one just recently that I thought was actually pretty exceptional. Talk about, explain these are the opportunities you have to talk about the budget. You and
I saw the
Sam are gonna
Facebook
have a-
post. Facebook post about each department. That was I like that.
Those ideas. So yeah, we're
Yeah.
Front Porch Forum, the website, the coffee chat,
Yeah.
Facebook, trying.
Yeah, I was just gonna speak up that's great.
I
You've
saw
been
it, too.
putting every budget in there on the page. I mean, that should generate some comments. I
Yeah.
mean, now people can really focus on one particular interest. So
Yeah, it's a good idea.
I really expected that you would have some comments.
One,
Me too, actually.
I almost hate to say this. The email that I sent you yesterday.
Oh.
Yeah.
People don't know where they live.
Oh,
Oh.
I hear that in passing.
Somebody said to me, "Oh, the town tax increase isn't going to affect me. I'm out in the center."
Isn't gonna.
And I said, "You don't know where you live? Essex Center is absolutely the town."
I know, like the center of it, actually.
And it's like, and I don't know, you know, we had this issue with businesses that insisted they were in the city and started collecting the local options tax, right? It's a I don't know how we need to send a map. I don't know. I don't know how
We
to.
have a map. Yeah, the Regional Planning Commission worked with Tammy and Essex Junction, and we have a map on our website. You can plug in your address, see where you're in. What
Well,
municipality
and
you're in.
we went with the elections too, but I would hope with all those people that showed up to vote, now they know where they are in the town, so that might have helped a little, but I don't know.
Sort of related to budget, but it's also in the reading file. So I just wanted to make a comment around the town coffee talks. I noticed it's at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday. We may want to give some thought to maybe having a Saturday morning session to just get a little bit different participation. I know weekdays can be tough. Not to
Yeah, we will
ask
also
that you
get
do more.
invited to a town meeting TV thing. Well, and you might have to do that one because, well, you might not. Use a strong word. You may be asked to because historically, the chair is on ballot for re-election. We don't have them do the budget presentation. That's not on TV all night.
Oops.
Because they give extra. We have the vice chair. Town meeting TV.
I will sharpen my pencil.
We build most of it. We work with you on that and make sure the PowerPoint looks good and that you're comfortable with it.
Well, and Greg goes with Greg. Yeah, you were there last year, weren't you? Yeah, so he was.
We haven't completely decided whether they're running again, so there's still hope there, but so that's another opportunity. It's a call-in show. People can call in and ask questions. I don't know how often people actually call in. But.
Can I ask a question about the town meeting, or should I wait till board member come?
Probably wait till
Save it.
Is it
yeah.
budget related?
Yeah,
Then go ahead.
kind of. No, it's not. No, it's not.
All right.
It's not. It's town meeting related. I'll save it.
I see Patty Davis. You have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just listening in when you were talking about people not knowing where they live. And Don, I agree with you when, working at the polls, during the election and everything. The first thing I had to ask, instead of their name, was, what street do you live on? Because people did not have a clue whether they were in District 23 or 24 or, is Essex Junction, is part of Essex Junction part of Essex Town now because of the redistricting, and how's that all going to work with the taxes, and asking me all these questions. And unfortunately, people don't come to the select board meetings, or we need more participation, definitely. And I think by voting by ballot, and the fact we don't have the Essex Retorter in print, a reporter in print anymore, having a lot of older people, especially living around here, there's no newspaper, so they have no idea what's going on, and they don't go on Front Porch Forum. I mean, I donate to Front Porch Forum because it's about, I like it, but a lot of people don't look at it, and they have a hard time even getting around on the website, the Essex Town website, to get into this meeting. This is what I hear from the public, just FYI. So,
Thanks, Patty.
you bet.
Okay, so any other comments on the budget? So, given what we've talked about, I don't think we are ready to adopt the municipal budget yet. Or do you have comments you wanted to make?
Just comments to make that sounds like you're not ready to adopt. I did put in, did some last minute stuff, trying to get the packet out, and said that you may finalize the number informally and then warn the public hearing. Tammy pointed me, and I was looking at last year's stuff, and that's how we kind of did it last year. But Tammy reminded me that in the charter it says that you do adopt it and then you warn the public hearing. So we'll make sure we get the process dialed in for when you are ready to adopt, but don't necessarily go off of the memo that's in your packet.
Okay. So I guess we commented on this earlier. We have 2 meetings in December, and by the final meeting in December, we need to know what budget number we want to go with so we can have 2 public hearings in January and then a meeting to warn the warning needs to be within the 30 to 40 day window prior to town meeting.
I think after tonight, though, I think we're all a lot closer than.
Yeah, some of the questions that came up. I think the certainly the capital is going to be another big discussion, and whether how much of a capital tax increase to ask for will be another big discussion that we'll have at that point. Which will be a town meeting question for the town meeting too.
The other things to consider are you don't have to have 2 public hearings. So if you can add additional meetings to your agenda schedule. So if you're not ready to adopt the budget by the end of December, you can either do one or both of those things.
We could also do it on another night that might attract more people too. We've done that before.
Both of our meetings in January and Tuesday night. Because of holidays.
Oh, good.
All right, Kendall, do you have something?
I was going to ask Greg, town manager, if you are comfortable that the budget as it's proposed is pretty close to what you will need. You're sure there's no place that's you're questionable and thought maybe I need a little more here, or because I know you guys sharpened your pencils really good. I was very impressed by the budget, but I mean,
we did, and it's lean, but this is what we think we need to operate to keep the services that the town's used to. Like I said when I first introduced it, any of those buffers are gone. The overtime, is the big one. If fire calls are higher than we've gotten in the past, those types of things you're going to go over budget. So I think that's I'm comfortable we can operate on this. I think if you're comfortable with the risk that we may go over and have to dip into fund balance or maybe not have fund balance. I think it's
okay.
tough compromise, but I think it's
I just wanted to make sure you had a chance to really express that.
No, thank you for that.
I know you keep all the strings in play, but thank you.
Try to. Thanks.
And so I guess the big questions that we still have are, the response to and from Essex Rescue. Not that I expect things will move a lot there, but that's a question that we still are looking at. And the other one is the insurance question. I think those are the 2 big ones that I see. Are there any other?
But senior van,
Senior van, okay.
Feedback.
That's another good one to make sure we account for. There's a couple of puts and takes that we've seen. If we can see I don't know. I don't want you to redo the whole budget sheet for sure, but at least with the change, the correction in the police revenue, just so we see what the final number is. The puts and takes we've talked about.
We're meeting next week with Sarah, and she sent over the number. I said that's about that 22.5%, but just because there are a few little tweaks here and there, I didn't want to put in writing exactly what it was. But next week we're meeting. We'll make these latest adjustments and be able to give you the latest number for December 5th.
And then the other big discussion is with how this interlinks with the capital plan. Do we need I think the recommendation is not to add more capital transfers, but we have to figure out how to fund the other part.
That's part of my question coming up.
All right. So given that we're not adopting anything, we don't want to warn any public hearings either. So consent. Oh no. We added the November 7th minutes. And so the issue there was that there's a we came back into session after executive session and made a motion to,
To authorize the manager to execute a lease and management agreement with the city and Tree Farm Management Group.
And Don made the motion and Ethan seconded it. And it passed unanimously.
because we're here. Any other changes to that? Okay.
Yeah, I would move to approve the minutes from November 7th, 2022 with that addition.
Second.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Don. Any further discussion? In favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to consent.
Make the motion, we accept the consent agenda as presented with the changes.
Second.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Ethan. We did pull November 7th out, so we don't.
That's why I said with the changes.
We already, yeah, okay. Oh, right. Yeah, well, whatever. We might
Yep.
doesn't matter. Okay, any further discussion about consent? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, consent approved, passes unanimously. And now we're on to reading file. And Ethan, you had a
Top priority. What I was thinking of many times, it came up in my mind tonight, but I couldn't ask because it was the budget, was, are we certain about any other business being able to be done besides the 4 vote? Because we only changed to vote the ballot by, or excuse me, to vote the budget by Australian ballot. Yeah. Rick.
So yeah. The budget is the only thing new that you can do by ballot.
Right.
Elections of officers, stuff like that is always by ballot. To do everything, all future business by ballot, you have to have a 4 vote at town meeting. So I was going to put that on a future agenda to see if you wanted to have that discussion of putting that on the ballot to have the town conduct all future municipal business by Australian ballot.
Because my question was going to be, can we change capital tax without having a 4 vote?
Gotten some feedback on VLCT from that, which I need to digest. I had asked and then got sidetracked with other things, and they needed some clarification from me as well. So with VLCT and Bill Ellis, we're going to answer that question.
Through the charter.
I want to make sure you're answering the right question. We can't by ourselves.
No. I'm saying town. You know,
At town meeting,
at town meeting,
make that proposal?
can any other business happen besides, or I guess all business would happen at town meeting besides voting on the budget is my question, which would make it a 4.
I can make it would have to be warned on the warning for town meeting, Ethan.
Okay.
So if you were going to have a discussion in a proposed capital tax increase,
It'd have to be on
it'd have to be part of the warning.
Right.
It's not something you could bring from the floor and let whoever's there that night vote on. It would have to be warned.
And then it could be changed on the floor if it was 1% or 2%. It could be changed on the floor in that manner, like the budget.
If you warn it to vote on the total from the floor, yes, it
Right.
could be changed at that point.
But you can't just bring it to the
No.
floor.
Yeah, it has to be warned, right? You can't just
Right.
bring it up.
So, I'm just theoretically trying to understand. But if you put it on our town meeting for all other business, and maybe we didn't do the capital tax, or did, those would just have to be on, and then it would have to be introduced from the floor.
No,
By the community?
No.
No.
What the discussion we need to have is whether we want to have a question asked on the floor, whether to move all business to Australian ballot. It would not apply the very next day.
Well, no, I understand
It
that.
would be the next year.
Right, I understand that. I just didn't know if, like, say we were
But
trying to
you
do a
can't bring
capital
up-
tax
you can't
change.
bring up and act on a question that's not on the warning.
Think of it
You
like-
could, it's public to be heard at that point, just somebody with an idea.
So, and I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding a little bit. So we can't change the capital tax this year.
Yes, we
Yeah.
well, I don't, we'd have to look at when it would be effective, it would probably be effective in 2024. So it would probably be the September.
If we
tax
did,
bills.
it would have to be possibly
And-
have to be.
And we would have to make sure we're
Encore.
very clear as to there's the question of the number, right? Can that number be changed from the floor? Right. So if we propose a 4-cent capital tax,
It changes it to 2,
can somebody? It's already at 2.
right? But
You know, changing it to 2 is essentially saying no
Right.
to because then the current tax would stay in place. I hope, I believe. But if they vote to change it to 3.5, if there's a proposal to amend the motion to amend the question, I think that can be done, but we'd have to
I
ask.
don't
that.
know. That's
Yeah.
asked that question.
But I would have to say that you're going to get a better result for your money if you put it all on, put that
on a ballot.
on a ballot,
Right.
because you get what. And now that we don't even actually have that much business that happens at town meeting, if you get 100 people,
Yeah,
you're going to be lucky.
it's
If you
gonna
really
be-
want to hear from the town, it needs to be where they can go
Right.
actually vote on it.
Oh, on the same side of the coin,
I know.
you could have a hard time getting those 100 people to vote on a ballot. You know?
There's no election in November this
But I
year.
was just curious.
Nothing.
I was just curious how this would transpire in the future. And that seals my curiosity for now until we
Yeah, yeah.
hear the legal side of things.
So we didn't warn that we were going to have a discussion about this, so we'll have to have another discussion about it. We will anyway. But,
Yeah, warn it on the next meeting.
So, under the reading file, I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Not only this board, but all the town staff also.
Thank you, and to you. Thanks. I'll pass that on.
So that we can move on here. I'm sorry. We still have executive session going.
Oh, I'm scrolling.
I think the $50,000 donation to the Essex Police Department is an exciting.
That was
thing.
nice. Yeah,
That's-
that's awesome.
And the stipulation is that the department decides how it gets
Yep.
spent. I think that's an awesome thing. And I'd like to thank the folks that, fortunately,
Sorry for their loss, but
Will,
thank you for the
sorry their
donation.
loss,
Yep.
yes. Yeah.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
I move that.
Yes.
Sorry. Ready? I move that the select board enter into executive session to discuss a proposed public official appointment in accordance with 1 VSA section 313A3 and to include the town manager.
Thank you, Don. Thank you. Is that Ethan?
Yes.
Seconded? Yes, thank you. Any further discussion? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, do we have?
And we will be coming back, but
Do we have just the one?
that one. Yep.
Okay.
Because we did the other two without.
And right, I forgot to have the discussion before we voted, but we can do that. Scott, you don't need to stay, but we will be coming back to if we come to a decision on the moderator. Coming back and making that appointment.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say the adjourn word.
No, not yet. I
I completely forgot that we need to do executive session.
So I was trying to move the reading file along. So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can
yeah,
keep going.
Shouldn't allow so much discussion.
It's all right.
I'm sorry. I
It's
just had to
fine.
bring it up to get it on
It's
the
how
next
people
agenda.
learn. People have to learn. I mean,
that's
he
right.
asked it. Who knows? Well, they might not have known that either. So it's fine. It's fine.